So there are 2 expected responses when someone asks you how you're doing. So I'm going to have my lovely assistant come up and help model some with me. Everybody give them a round of applause.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. Hey, Peyton, how you been?
Fine. Busy. And you?
I'm so busy. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So these socially programmed answers don't really say much, do they? There are much better ways to engage in fulfilling conversations for both parties, but that's a different talk for another day. And for now, we're pretty much stuck with getting asked this cultural question over and over and again. So what we can control most immediately is our own answer to the question. So today, I'm obviously focusing on the I'm so busy possibility for how to answer. I'm going to start out broad by talking about why busy is a trap, then apply objectivist philosophy to tie into values pursuit, and finally give you some concrete strategies for implementing these mindset and habit changes. So, I really, truly hate busy as an answer to how are you, even more than I hate this zero information, fine. But this is not always the case. I used to be among the worst offenders. I thought busy and its cousin, tired, made me important. I thought busy made me impressive. I thought busy, every time I dish that out, helped me collect some cool points. So can anyone else relate to that mindset, either now or sometime in the past? Yeah, all right, good. So you know where I'm coming from. But even if you're not or have never been an I'm so busy person yourself, this talk is still for you. I hope you'll still learn some strategies for how to more successfully pursue your own highest values, and perhaps even gain some insight into your busy friends and family members. Now, sometimes you might actually be busy, and there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, your time should be full, as long as it's wisely and intentionally used. So what I'm taking issue with is more the connotation of busy that most people mean when they say that as an answer to how are you. So the type of busy I don't like is competitive, and it lacks a sense of control. So I reached my I'm so busy peak in college. I was legitimately very busy with classes, clubs, work, but I'm talking about the busy attitude. Lots of my fellow students would say they were busy, but I was busy. I had this many credits, and I was running this many groups, and I only slept for so many hours this week. But really, it was just my insular method for feeling superior. I distinctly remember one conversation with a friend where she told me that she didn't drink caffeine and she slept for 8 or 9 hours a night. I judged her super harshly for that. And how silly of her to think she could be accomplishing anything with her life if she was spending 6 hours extra in bed every night and she wasn't taking advantage of cognitive performance-enhancing drugs, right? Yikes. I was so stuck in the busy trap that I looked down on anyone who was remotely healthy. So you don't have to raise your hands this time, but give me a little nod or a meaningful eyebrow raise if you kind of know what I'm talking about. You've been there, done that. A couple of you, I see. All right. Relatedly, some people experience self-imposed judgment and guilt for not feeling busy. If you're a grad student or a new mother, or as Caitlin and I were talking about earlier, an MBA, busy seems like a way of life. So if you're not busy Are you measuring up? In addition to this second-handed attempt at deriving meaning in your life by being busier than your peers, I hate that the busy attitude implies a lack of control over your time. So going back to my college example, no one made me take that many credits or join that many clubs or go to bed so late. Those are all my choices. I could have easily done less if I wanted to, but somehow I managed to twist it such that I was both the conqueror over everyone else who wouldn't or couldn't do as much as me, and I was the victim of the oppressive schedule I was forced to have. So again, please save any substantive questions or comments until the end, but are there any clarifying questions so far on what I mean by anything, and is everyone more or less on board on why the busy attitude is a trap? Feeling good?
Yes.
Cool. All right. So, how did I break free of my busy attitude? I found Ayn Rand, and I finally realized that busy is a choice. Now, all of you have already found Rand, so you're well on your way. I believe if you're familiar enough with objectivism, there should be no barriers left beyond taking a few key points to heart. First, the competitive aspect. I needed to realize that the important measurement wasn't whether I was surpassing others' accomplishments, but whether I was doing all I could to live my best life. I'd become first-handed in my evaluation of the good. So for me, that still means having super high standards of achievement, but now it's on my terms, and someone else's success isn't a threat. Someone somewhere might be doing more than me or better than me, but that's not a detriment to me. In fact, it's something to be celebrated. I also needed to let it really sink into my bones that I have free will and I make my own choices. And this is really hard for a lot of people to accept. It can be a lot easier to pretend that you're helpless, just going along with what you have to do, and that way you're not responsible for bad things in your life, and you don't have to do the work of making changes. But all of those have to can be traced back to choices about values. So let's do some role playing with some common objections.
But I have to work.
Yes, if you value your life, you have to use your mind and be productive. But do you have to do the exact type and amount of work that you're doing now and complaining about? Or are there other choices out there that would make you less negatively busy or be more fulfilling? This audience should be pretty familiar and comfortable with the thought of varied options in the realm of work and productivity, so I won't spend more time on that.
But I have to clean the house.
No, you don't. So it might not feel like it if you're, one more. If you're battling a culturally imposed idea of what a home should look like. But if you truly hate cleaning, and you don't mind when your place is messy, ditch the duty mindset and spend your precious time elsewhere. If, however, you find that you really do value a clean home, there's still always options. You could hire someone else to do it. You could ask your partner to chip in more. You could devise a new system for cleaning that's more efficient.
You can buy robots to clean for you.
You can buy yourself a cleaning robot.
Just get the immigrants to do it.
Or get some immigrants to do it. Yeah.
There you go.
If none of those options are seeming to work out, you'll still benefit enormously from a simple mindset change from, I have to clean, to, I'm choosing to clean my house today because I value when my living space is tidy and I can proudly show it off to my guests. So the first makes you a helpless victim. while the second is empowered and value-driven. So, that's fun.
But I have to visit my family every week.
Don't. Again, if it's making you miserable or it's crowding out your time to pursue other values, you don't have to visit your family all the time. Consider whether you're being driven by duty and guilt or love and enjoyment. If it's the former, peace out. If it's the latter, you can again switch it in your mind. I have to visit turns into I'm choosing to spend time with my family because I value our close relationships, which are only possible through lots of shared time and experiences. So, what other have-tos can you think of? Either that you hear from other people as objections to the idea that you can make your own choices in life, or that you might believe in yourself. And are there any have-tos that we can't trace down to choices about value? Real question.
There are some people who go out on social engagement and they essentially say, I have to go on the social engagement every Friday night because they have to.
Can anyone drive that down to what the choice is actually based on? Yeah.
Yeah, I had a situation like that with my father-in-law who was a Mason, and he badly wanted me to become a Mason. So he invited me to join. Didn't really know what it was, and it turned out to be actually kind of an interesting experience. But it was not something that was really directed at my values. But I went, Friday night, many times, not every Friday night, but many times, just to go. And it was a bit of a, I guess it was in between something I would value and something that was, I considered to be a good position.
All right, so the general statement from Caton was there can be people who feel like they have to go to a certain social engagement all the time and they just feel obligated to do so. And then we got a specific example of going to a recurring social function with your dad and you didn't really care about it so much. So I think there it drives down to if you're not enjoying the actual activity, like going to the bar or going to this professional association or whatever, if you're still choosing to go, there might be other reasons and values why. Is it because you valued your dad's opinion and relationship and you maybe got to spend some time with him? Or, this wouldn't be my favorite way to spend a Friday night with my friends every Friday night, but I want to see them anyway, and it's worth going. I'll deal with that, and maybe next time it can be my turn or something. Or if you find that those other options still aren't cutting it and you're just really not feeling it, you don't have to go. But what if then it is important to you? So there you can find if something is a true value or not. So, any other potential examples? Yeah.
I got another one. I have a couple granddaughters, and my daughter is unmarried, right? She's kind of struggling to keep everything together. So I usually go there on the weekend and spend time with the grandchildren, and my daughter has time to work and do other things. And on the one hand, it's a challenge to juggle everything in my life so I can be there. But on the other hand, it's a lot of fun, and we have a relationship with the grandchildren and my daughter. So that's what I choose to do, definitely, and I ask myself that question. I do ask myself that question. Am I doing this from doing or because I want to?
Yeah.
And some days I want to, but it does make my life very busy. And I definitely have to juggle things and try to make everything fit.
Yeah, but you find that for you it's worth it. It's a high enough value that you'll choose to rearrange the rest of your time so that you can spend this time with that part of your family. When I was doing practice talks at home, with the composition of the audience, both times I did it, I got it, but I have to take care of my kids. Well, that one is closer to a have to. But really, that also should be pretty evidently values-based, right? Like, you're doing it because you value your child and your relationship together and that kind of thing. But even there's still options. You don't have to be the one caring for your kids 24/7. There's alternatives that might make it more fulfilling and engaging for you, so that when you do have time together, it's more quality.
I have to correct people on the internet.
Oh, so you brought up the example. I have to correct people on the internet. Earlier talk today, for those of you who weren't here, referenced that XKCD comic. Like, oh, come to bed. I can't. Somebody's wrong on the internet. But that, you really don't have to. Like, there are not many instances where that's not a duty or compulsion kind of thing. So, any other clarifying questions on anything so far before I move on? Okay. So now we understand that the busy attitude is a choice based on an impoverished sense of free will and a competitive, second-handed standard of the good. But how do we go about life after breaking free from the busy trap? Value pursuit. In case you can't read this, it's a quote from Mr. Rogers. It says, "You rarely have time for everything you want in this life, so you need to make choices. And hopefully your choices can come from a deep sense of who you are." So we'll all be lucky enough to listen to Dr. Bernstein talk about how to be an impassioned valuer this weekend. So I don't need to take too much time on this point. We should all be starting from the assumption that values pursuit is important and worthwhile. But many people who are so busy don't really have a good sense of their values. So if being busy or busier than your peers isn't the value in and of itself, what's left? So here's where you need to work on your introspection, your detective skills about yourself. One method is to think about what really pulls at your heart when you say that you're too busy for it. So back when I was so busy, if someone asked me what I'd read lately, my answer would be that I was too busy to read, except for school, but it made me sad every time. I could say that I valued reading, but my actions clearly weren't in line with that. Now, what have you read lately is one of my favorite questions, because I always have so much to say. On the other hand, if someone had asked me about what sports I played, I could have said I was too busy to play sports, but that'd be a lie. Really, I just don't like playing sports that much. So in that instance, being too busy would just be like a convenient excuse. So now my answer would be a more truthful, I don't play sports because they're not enough of a value to me compared to other activities I could be pursuing. So what are you regretfully too busy for? Maybe something you missed from childhood, or something you've always wanted to try someday. Real question. Traveling more, that's a common one.
Doing more art.
Doing more art. Creative outlets of all kinds often get neglected.
Trying to relax without focusing on relaxation.
Ooh. Unfocused relaxation. I like it. It's important. Common ones I hear all the time is exercising and reading. Right? Everyone's too busy to exercise or too busy to read. I hope I can inspire you to make that someday, today, or, when you get back to your regularly scheduled lives. So after you have a sense of what your valued activities include, you have to prioritize them. What is non-negotiable? What is really, really important? What is nice when you can get it in, but not crucial? What's just an added bonus? If you have a flat value hierarchy, everything seems equally important, and you'll default to doing what's already established, and what's easiest, and what's comfortable, potentially at the expense of a higher value. So, for example, I strongly value both reading and watching television. Both are important to me, and I used to spend way more time with TV than with reading. I thought it was kind of scratching the same itch, and I thought reading more would cut into my TV time. But after really introspecting about it, I realized reading is a higher value to me than TV, and I was missing out on it. So I had to change my behavior to be more in line with my beliefs and desires. So it's not like I threw out my TV. I still watch a lot, but now it has to take its turn in line for my leisure time after reading. So for most people, this prioritization includes building in balance between different areas of your life. For instance, your career might be your highest value at a certain point in your life, but you shouldn't entirely neglect your health for the sake of your career, for example. This type of singly focused value hierarchy is just as damaging as a flat value hierarchy. So they don't lead to satisfying full life. So are there any simple, comfortable activities that you might be over-prioritizing at the expense of higher value? Or is there an area of your life that you're neglecting that still should get some attention even if it's not the highest priority? I often hear that, I spend too much time on Facebook or whatever, because that's just like the easiest, low rent, like click and scroll, low brain power. And I'm not anti-Facebook. I spend a lot of time. I love it. I think it's a real value. But sometimes my behavior over-prioritizes it to what it should be. Any other thoughts that you guys have on? Everyone's getting sleepy on this here. All right.
TV is probably the easy one, right?
TV, yeah.
You don't have to work very hard, right? You just
Yeah.
watch.
Facebook is like my version of TV, though, so I'll just find myself scrolling on Facebook for, it's been an hour. Oops,
Yeah,
I should have been reading a book.
Yeah, great.
Although with Facebook, I find I can follow that as I walk around. Like as I'm walking around during the day, you can actually check up on things. So you use time that is not normally used. You can't.
Some people can do it that way, sure.
I should spend more time on Facebook.
Maybe you're under-prioritizing Facebook. That's possible. I think it's probably more rare than the other way. That's possible.
I'm now doing marketing on Facebook, and so I have a good excuse to be on there.
There you
more
go.
than I ought to be.
Perfect. So now we understand that introspecting about one's values and prioritizing those that are most important while not neglecting other real values will give you ideas about how to spend your time. But how do you actually do it? How do you change your habits and your schedule to be in line with your values? Well, it depends. All right. I'm going to let you all read this for a moment because I know there's a segment of you who won't hear a word I say, so you kind of let your eyes take it all in. And if you can't read the little words, that's okay. I'll also go over it.
How about we have 4 volunteers for the 4 quadrants? I'll go first.
I got it.
You got it.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for the idea. So I'm not going to go into too much detail about these 4 tendencies. I'm by no means an expert on Rubin's framework about it or its scientific validity or anything like that. I simply want to illustrate that people with different personalities will need different concrete strategies for how to implement changes of any kind in their lives. So you'll need to pick and choose the methods that sound most reasonable and effective for you. Rubin has a great blog post about strategies that work best for people in each tendency. Easy to find on Google, or I can send it to you later if you want. But in brief, the first tendency is the upholder. These are people who are good at meeting expectations that are either externally or internally imposed. Most strategies will work well for these folks. Next, there are the questioners. They're good at meeting their own internal expectations, such as personal goals and intentions, but poor at meeting external expectations. And I'm sorry, I lost my place. Such as a deadline from a boss or keeping a promise to a friend. Next is the obliger. I don't love the name, but it definitely applies to me. And we're good at meeting external expectations, but bad at meeting internal expectations. Obligers and questioners will clearly need to use different strategies for both for implementing life changes. Finally, there are the rebels. And for these folks, I most strongly recommend reading Rubin's blog post or even her book, since many of the traditional strategies that you hear either from me or on how to change habits and things won't work well for these folks. You need a different way around things. All right. Oh well, you got one bonus. So for those who are good at meeting your own inner expectations, the upholders and the questioners, you'll need to find a way to make your goals and priorities as real to you as possible. This includes getting crystal clear on why you're intending to make a change in the first place. And you'll even want to, click again to advance the slide. You'll even want to form an image of the change and the new habit as an important part of your identity. Unfortunately, I don't really relate well to people with these tendencies, so I don't have any rich examples to share, but perhaps if any of you out there identify, you can share some at the end. So next is a strategy that can work for those who respond either to internal or external expectations, because you can mentally frame it either way, and that's monitoring. So I used to be too busy to eat healthfully, but once I determined that my health was a higher value than I was treating it as, I knew my behavior had to change. So one of the things I started doing was tracking all my food on an app. So there's rules about calories and macros, and I set them all myself, so it's not really an external expectation, but in my mind, I just file it as I can't or I have to eat that. It would be against the rules. And suddenly it's not a choice open to me anymore, and it's easy. And as a side note, Rubin also has a useful framework for people who identify as abstainers versus moderators that I'd like to talk about if anyone is interested later at the end. So there are apps for tracking everything. So if you're too busy to walk, for example, you can get a step counter and have rules about your minimum daily steps. And suddenly you're making the time to walk because it's part of the rules, either internally or in your mind as externally. For those who are good at meeting outer expectations, the upholders and the obligers, you'll need to find ways to keep yourself in line when the internal I shoulds aren't enough. Fortunately, I do have some expertise here, as I'm a consummate obliger. And the type of habits and goals relating to time management that we're talking about today are all personal intentions, so they're not coming from an external source, like your boss or your teammate or something. But there are ways to externalize the internal. All right. First, schedule your priorities. I used to be too busy to read for pleasure, but now it literally goes on my calendar. And for me, if it's on my calendar, I do it. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. I use Google Calendar, and there's a really cool feature called Google Goals that you can use. You have to set it up on either Android or iOS apps rather than on the desktop version. But you can set up customizable goals in any category for any time and Google will automatically fit them into your schedule. So it feels really external. So mine include introspect for 15 minutes once a week, any time of day. Have a dance party for 20 minutes, 3 times a week in the afternoon. And cook a new recipe once a month on the weekend. And I started this in December, and I haven't missed a single day or week or month of any of my goals. But if I had just said, I'm going to go for a walk once a week or whatever, wouldn't have happened. Because if you're so busy, you're never going to simply find the time to do the things you want. But if you schedule them out intentionally, you'll be making the time for the things that are most important to you. Finally, make yourself accountable to an external source. So this is the best way for me to make sure I do things that are values to me, but are toughest to do in the moment. So, don't feel like going to the gym today? Too bad. My personal trainer's going to be there. I can't let him down. Know I'll be struggling with getting my GLOCon speech prepared before the last minute. Recruit my friends at home to come and watch it, and suddenly I'm obligated to work on it a couple weeks ahead of time. Have a book that's been sitting on my shelf in my to-read pile forever that I can't seem to tackle it. I create an online book club, and I give them a date of when I'm going to post my review and my questions so other people would know if I missed the deadline. Finally, I guess I said finally twice. I did add this on after the fact. Finally, get creative. So this is a general strategy that can work for everyone. We've talked a lot about adding in new activities that fit our values, but what about when your schedule is legitimately full, so you think you have to drop something, but you've already pared away all that you're willing to? This is when you have to think outside the box. Is there a more efficient way you can accomplish something? An easier method of pursuing a time-consuming value at least sometimes? Could you pair values together? Last year I started doing that with exercising and reading, 2 of the most commonly named I don't have time for that activities. So I joined a new gym that's a 40-minute drive from my house, which could feel like a huge time suck. But first of all, with high-intensity training, you only have to go work out for 30 minutes, once or twice a week. Nice. And secondly, I decided to start listening to books on TV during my gym commute, so I could kill 2 birds with 1 stone. All right, I want to add that you will go through periods of your life that are more overwhelming than usual. If you're preparing for a cross-country move and a new job, or you just had a new baby, or there's a medical emergency, sometimes all you might feel is busy. And that's okay, as long as you keep it temporary and you don't let that mindset become your new normal. As quickly as reasonable, you should work to getting back to feeling in control of your schedule and your ability to pursue your values. And there may also be times when you feel too emotionally or energetically drained to tackle any values that are mentally demanding. So ask me about the no 0 days concept if you'd like to hear an idea for how to deal with that later. So we've talked about why the I'm so busy mindset is a trap, and how to take ownership of your time, and ways you can prioritize your values. Now, move.
Yeah.
Now, let's circle back to that all too common greeting of how are you? I'd love to be able to change our typical conversation openers, like I said, but for the time being, this is what we're stuck with from other people over and over. So if we've eliminated I'm so busy as one of our possible answers, and we're actually actually interested in talking to the person, so like fine isn't going to suffice, what's left? So, one more time with my lovely assistant. Hey, Caitlin, how you been?
Living life the fullest. And you?
Busy pursuing my values. Yeah, okay. Even I admit, those are pretty cheesy. And you're not always going to be in like an awesome mood when someone asks. So, let's brainstorm ways that we can respond to how are you that might in fact acknowledge that we are busy, but that don't fall prey to second-handed or helpless aspects of the busy mindset. So maybe something like, life's pretty full, but I'm doing stuff I love. Any other ideas?
I mean, you can give them specifics, but you can't
Yeah.
get in too deep, right? That's part of it.
Yeah, so he was saying we can give specifics, and that's great. So my premise in asking is kind of like, when you actually do intend to start a conversation, it's not just like the grocery store clerk and you're supposed to be like, fine, and it's not a real question. But when someone is actually going to talk to you, yeah, giving specifics, like something concrete that you did today or this week or whatever that you want to talk about because it's an exciting value of yours that you're pursuing.
So I often give a one-word answer which throws people off and makes them stop. I actually often spontaneously say excellent.
Ooh, so changing up the adjective, you're not just fine,
They-
seems excellent.
They literally sounded like, wow, what happened? I was like, no, I mean, everything is on track, and so I'm feeling
I
good.
like it. I like it. I think one thing you have to be sure, and I don't think people would think this of you, is some people say stuff like that sarcastically. Like, how are you? Oh, living the dream. You know, if you actually mean like it's really shitty. Don't be sarcastic. That's not nice. But yeah, if you're actually excellent and you mean it, like that's a much better answer. And it invites further question and discussion.
It's actually pretty shocking
Yeah.
how much it throws off people.
I believe it. I believe it. You're not following the script. Any other ideas?
Well, yeah, last night, I guess I was a little stressed, and Andy came up to me and he says, Amy, are you okay? And I said, oh, I'm just overwhelmed. And he's like, oh, you're all right? Are you going to be all right? I'm like, oh, absolutely. Well, and I stopped for a second. I said, you know, I enjoy doing the work. I enjoy doing the work. I know, and anything that's stressful right now is only temporary. As soon as I get, and I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. So, so it was a moment for me to say, okay, no, this is what I want.
Yeah. So that's acknowledging your own choice in the matter. You don't have to be doing all these things that are making you feel overwhelmed, but they're important to you. They're valuable to you, and this is what you want to do. Yeah, even if in the moment it can be difficult. So, all right. Thank you all for listening and for waiting through the delay. And now I'd love to hear any questions you guys have with my remaining time.
I just want to say I liked how you described the flat value system.
Absolutely.
Because yeah, and then the thing that you do most out of all those values is not the things that you do normally, but what you're more comfortable or you're spending well with.
The easy one.
Yeah.
That's the curse of making everything a number one priority.
Exactly.
It defeats the idea of what priority means.
Exactly. If everything's number one, nothing is number one.
So even in, so one of the things that you alluded to, and we spoke about, you know, two things that, let's say watching television, binge watching Netflix, or doing Facebook. But the thing is that you could be on Facebook and use it or misuse it. So for instance, you could be interacting with the wrong types of posts. You could be focusing on the wrong types of posts. Like,
Totally.
you know, you might be writing about literature and someone might be writing, hey, the administration just did this, and you know, there'll be a whole
Yeah.
Depending on what you are and what your values are, both posts would be Facebooking, but
Sure.
one of them will be bringing you more value.
Totally.
Also similarly on Netflix, sometimes I watch reruns.
You watch all the time?
I watch reruns because I don't have focus.
Oh, really?
I just keep watching the same series over and over again. And I sometimes do it because, well, Stranger is worth it, but other stuff. The thing is, sometimes I'm actually, I don't want to even try to search for something. It's silly. It's a little bit, I don't know how to explain it. Like
I read a paper about that actually in another life. I was in a psychology student and I was taking some media classes. And people are really comforted by watching reruns of stuff that you already know what's going to happen. It's safe, you know it's going to be good, there's no investment of time and emotional energy. Whereas watching a new show, like, that's a little risky. You don't know if you're going to like it, you don't know if it might make you sad, you don't know if it's going to fulfill the reason why you're watching TV right now.
I feel pressure. It's like,
Yeah.
but the point is that even doing the same thing can be done as in like Facebooking. You actually kind of have to fine grain even that. Like if you're
Yeah.
exercising, what are your goals
Right.
at
Like
that
you
point?
could be on Facebook in the Read With Me discussion group talking about 93, or you could be on Facebook fighting with someone who's wrong on the internet. To me, one of those is a value and one is not.
Right. And that would depend on the person. If the person is a political
Sure.
commentator, then
If that really, makes you happy, then more power to it. Any other questions or comments? Mark?
So one of the really great suggestions I got out of objectivism was the whole idea of the value hierarchy. It's sometimes called the massive egoism, where you actually, how do you choose between two goals? You actually have to reduce them down to your values. What's actually the most important in your life, and you got kind of your career and your love life is the top two, and you relate things to those and health and everything. And the idea of writing it down on paper to help make these trade-off decisions of what to do in your day, in your week, is I found really helpful. I eventually wrote one, like a draft, very messy,
Yeah.
kind of a sketch of one.
Yeah, so like a really
Yeah.
systematic evaluation of your own values and what is actually more important. And then any activity you can tie to, well, this is health and family, so yeah, it's pretty important, or this is other things that are less or whatever. So I think that's a good idea. If you are serious about it, take it really seriously, write it out, grapple with it.
Yeah, I was wondering if you had done that, or
I
if you know
haven't.
anyone else.
I think it's a
Yeah.
great idea. I haven't done it myself in quite that systematic of a way. I just more introspect about it, and I haven't written it down. But I know a couple other people who have, and I saw them asking, hey, has anyone else done this? Let's talk about our experiences of writing out our actual prioritized values. So I can put you guys in touch after.
Following Andy's talk, you will find that irresistible.
I'm sure. See, I'm a preview to Andy.
Just that little bit. Do you have any thoughts on, because we kind of touched on it during your talk, on fear of missing out, FOMO? That idea that I have to go out with my friends on Friday night, not, when you touched on the idea of feeling obligated, but more than that, the sense that you're missing out on something.
Yeah, that can be super real. I relate to the fear of missing out a lot. I haven't thought about it too systematically, so I don't know that I'll have much new to say. I think in general we should be looking for things that we're doing out of fear versus love. And try to have your motivations be more positive oriented rather than avoiding negative. So just as a general outlook, and I think FOMO falls into very clearly avoiding the negative of the missing out feeling rather than pursuing the positive of doing the activity. So perhaps one simple way to determine, am I doing this because of FOMO, or am I doing this because I want to do it? I don't know where I was going. So try and determine which of it is, and try and orient yourself more toward pursuing the positive rather than avoiding the negative.
I think along those, you commented on introspection. I think it's important to make time for that.
Yeah.
And like for me, I get up in the morning, I have coffee for like an hour. I'm just kind of sitting there
Great.
thinking about my day, my week, what I want to do.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, it's just something I've been thinking about because there was an article in the New York Times, a few people have talked about it, JOMO, and the joy of missing out.
Ah, I like it. I like it. Yeah, and you know, like Amy was talking about the morning pages activity. That's a method of introspection to think about your thoughts on things. As I mentioned, it's one of my Google goals. Like introspect is on my calendar for Wednesday at 10 a.m. So I have to do it now. Because after I finished up with seeing a therapist for a while, I was like, I need to keep doing this on my own. So for me, it's in my calendar, whether it's just part of your everyday routine of this is what I do for an hour in the morning with my coffee, or this is what I journal for 15 minutes, or whatever. Yeah, I think for most people, if not all, introspecting should be a pretty high priority so that you can figure the rest of the stuff out.
You said the 4 types of people, right? So I think you had 2 things for the clarity and what was
I can bring it back. Maybe. Hopefully. No? Maybe I can't.
Wave at the bottom left.
Use the arrow.
There you go. Yeah. Clarity and identity. So I'm actually a questioner.
Okay.
If there are obligations and they conflict with what I want to do, they will be made to go away one way or another, and sometimes it's to the detriment of my long-term thing. So you use the word make something real. So I mean that's I actually really like the word authentic for that. Like so, there are a lot of times where some of the things that you're obliged to do are actually good for you, even though as a kid I integrated that most obligations were horrible imposition on me because often they were the way I had things. But the thing is, if they become authentic, if I actually agree with them on a deeper level, and I can see how it fits in with what what is good for me, that barrier almost completely goes away. It's just amazing how it works.
Yeah, because for me, I have to take something that's internal and artificially externalize it. For you and other questioners, you have to take things that are external and really internalize it so that you believe it and you agree to the extent that it becomes an internal expectation rather than merely an external.
So to give you a funny example, when I was growing up and I was in school, one of the best days of my life would be when you'd go and buy textbooks. Because I would actually read the whole textbooks in the first week after we bought them. But you would not be able to make me read my textbooks before exams.
Okay, yeah. I'm so not a questioner. That's great. But I don't get it myself. But
I'm actually amazed.
You and I are on the same page. Yeah.
I have one more question.
Absolutely.
Lauren, how are you?
Life's pretty busy, but I'm doing stuff I love.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, sometimes I trip people up and they ask me how I am. I actually tell them.
That's what I
Yeah,
And they
exactly.
look at me like, oh.
Yeah, that's another thing too. Like, just be
TMI.
real. Like, say an actual emotion other than.
Right.
I usually do that.
Yeah.
But generally, any answer other than fine or its synonyms really throws people off. That's
I
how.
like doing that.
Right.
I decided to answer that question in earnest all the time. And fortunately, it's not hard because my most common answer is either, I'm well, how are you? Or, all things considered, I'm well, how are you? Those are my two go-to answers.
And that's
I
a
mean
very
it.
selfish reason as well, because you're acknowledging your own internal
Oh yeah, that's
name of money.
integrity and self-honesty.
Well, the other fun part of that, I don't mean to get us distracted, is you're answering the question, but you're also reminding yourself,
Mm-hmm.
I'm well. Things are good. It's hell right now, but I'm well.
I like that. Seems like a good note, and I don't know if there's any other questions or comments.
I really have one.
Outstanding.
Thank you, everybody.
Just one final question. The whole idea of flat value hierarchy versus having just one singular to the exclusion of all others. Did you come up with?
No,
you
I didn't come up with either concept, but they're ones that I've had for so long and from so many sources, I don't really remember where I originally got the
Do you
ideas
get it from
from.
any objective sources? Because
I think flat value hierarchy I've gotten from
okay, yeah, that's
some secondary
Some
objective
people like,
source.
I think it was Jen Casey who did the essential
Yeah,
talk. And,
Jen Casey talked about
and
it.
because there's a book called Essentialism, it said like one of the curses is this idea of all these pressing values
Yeah.
of equal strength coming at you from external sources, and you have to take charge and say, okay, I can only do these things.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
sure there's others too.
Yeah, then when you write down a to-do list,
Or
which I
psychology
have a
stuff,
bad habit
yeah.
of doing in the morning, I write down tasks like, oh, I need to do this, I also need to do this, I also need to do this.
Have you heard how to be a
Prioritize.
fashion valuer by Andrew Bernstein?
Great. Tomorrow.
You're about to find out one of the places that has been covered.
Yeah. So real quick before we wrap up here, thank you again, Lauren. So that was a great